problem with making $1 billion movie is that everyone's going to want another one. Creative vision and artistic integrity be damned, studio executives are just going to keep dumping piles of cash on your front lawn until you finally sign the contract for a sequel. Everyone's got their price after all. Released in 2019, The Joker follows Arthur Fleck's descent into madness as he moves through the uncaring megacity that is Gotham. Rather than observe him through the action-focused lens of a Batman movie, however, we stay with Arthur as the world just keeps piling on and on and on. It's claustrophobic, it's brutal, and it keeps you in the headspace of a pitiable individual who just wants to make the world laugh. In short, it very effectively makes you empathize with one of the greatest villains to ever grace the silver screen. And it did it in a way that nobody saw coming. The Joker was poised to go down as one of the greatest comic book movies ever made. And it would have, until those dump trucks full of money started showing up at Todd Phillips' house. Then we got Joker, Folie. Let me start off by saying that, taken in isolation, this movie is perfectly serviceable. The acting is strong, cinematography is gorgeous, and the writing is above average. It tries to venture into new territory, at least for this type of movie, by using singing and dancing as a way to show emotion and reveal what the characters are thinking. But we can't take this movie in isolation. By its very nature as a sequel, it has to be viewed through the lens of the first. And given that fact, there is simply no comparison. Joker Folie failed as a continuation of the original. Right from the off, we're shown a muzzled, medicated, and mildly amused Arthur Fleck as he goes about his life as an Arkham inmate. Gone is a terrifyingly happy madman that he turned into at the end of the first movie. It's a little worrying, but we press on. We come to find out that it's been a few years since the first movie, and Gotham is finally gearing up for the trial of the century as Harvey Dent seeks the death penalty for Arthur in the name of justice. Then, in an incredibly chance meeting, Arthur sees Harleen Lee Quinzel for the first time, and we're off to the races. Metaphorically speaking, of course, this movie has some serious pacing issues. Let's get the obvious stuff out of the way first, the musical numbers. It was a novel concept, and one that could have worked had it been done a little differently. There's just so many of them that after the first three, they really start to lose their luster. As it was in the first movie, music is a huge part of this one, so it only makes sense that the concept would be developed further as a way to represent Arthur's psychosis. The problem is that this isn't the same Arthur that we experienced in the first movie. It feels like a boring, muted old man rather than a psychotic that would view the world as one big dance number. But even setting that gripe aside, after a certain point, the musical pieces feel like they were there to pad the runtime, and to give Lady Gaga something to do. Speaking of which, let's talk about Miss Quinzel. I want to get this out of the way first so you don't misconstrue my comments here. I genuinely like Harley Quinn. I think she's a fascinating character, and I've loved her since the 90s animated series. I loved the solo Harley Quinn show on HBO, at least the first couple of seasons, and I thought Margot Robbie was the perfect choice to play her, even if the writing was absolute garbage. So when I say that Harley Quinn was a ghost in this movie, you'll understand that I'm not saying it as a hater. She appears wherever the plot needs her to be, regardless of how difficult it would be for her to get there. She has no impact on the plot whatsoever, and she doesn't even get enough screen time for me to really get to know her in the way that she should be known. It felt like she was there for window dressing, a way to drum up interest in the movie and add a few slow-mo shots to spice up the trailers. I know Lady Gaga can act, I know she can sing, and I know she can dance. She just wasn't given any enough of those things to justify her appearance in this movie. Hell, no one really was. Joaquin Phoenix was incredible in the first movie, so much so that he won a damn Oscar for his performance. And if I didn't know that it was him in this sequel, I would have said it was a completely different actor. The pain that he felt in the first movie is gone, as is the manic energy he brought at its climax. In Folie he's just a man going through the motions, both as an actor and the character he's portraying. I hesitate to use the phrase character assassination since it gets bandied about way too much these days, but it genuinely felt like that. I didn't recognize the Arthur Fleck I'd grown to know and appreciate from the first movie. And that's really the crux of my issue with Folie. It felt safe, which is something the first movie was definitely not. It dared to make you empathize with Arthur, to put yourself in his big floppy shoes as the steam rose in his metaphorical kettle. It wasn't afraid to show how bad things just happen to good people. And that's right, I said good people. Arthur began the movie as a good man. Watch it again if you don't believe me. And then the world pushed him to his breaking point, and we got a front row seat to see just how much easier it is to go down the stairs than up them. Joker had something to say. Folie does not. But that's enough big picture stuff. Let's talk about the writing. Spoiler alert, if you haven't watched it, you have been warned. In order to prep for the sequel, I sat down and watched the first movie again. And in doing so, I came to the conclusion that there was no way that Arthur Fleck was not supposed to be the Joker. Everything from his skewed sense of humor, to the loss of his medical records and Gotham's bureaucracy, to even the final shot of him dancing towards the light with bloodied footprints, it all set him up as the clown prince of crime. He was going to be a man with no background, who turned a mirror on the world and laughed at its hypocrisy. Its ending was perfect, and it felt like the closing of a good book, and it would have been all she wrote. And then it made $1 billion and people got scared. They got scared of the way that audiences connected with Arthur, the way that some of them even sympathized with him. So, rather than let sleeping dogs lie, the studio tried to have their cake and eat it too, by making a sequel and hopefully another $1 billion, and completely changing the core of Arthur Fleck. They did this by destroying the confidence he developed at the end of the first movie. They throttled back on the overwhelming support of Gotham's public, and they even sparingly used his laughing disorder to stop the audience from sympathizing with him, and the only mistreatment came at the hands of Arkham's corrections officers. The end result is a movie that really didn't need to be made, and probably shouldn't have been, and as of the time of filming, hasn't even recouped its production costs. So bearing all this in mind, I decided to take a crack at the broad strokes of a better hypothetical sequel. I am a writer after all, and I just couldn't help myself. Keeping the bones of Folie in place, we find Arthur locked in Arkham, having been given medication to keep his mania in check. Immediately, we discover that he's been pocketing the pills, and are shown that he's using his fame as the Joker to win over the inmates, and garner public support for his trial outside the hospital. It rapidly becomes clear that rather than rehabilitating him, Arkham is only feeding his delusions of fame, and allowing him to rationalize his Joker persona. Note I said persona, not personality. At no point in either movie did they even hint that he had dissociative identity disorder. Enter Harleen Quinzel. Rather than a bored socialite who's checked herself into Arkham, she's a doctoral student that's fascinated with Fleck's case and the public's perception of it. Hell, you can even keep a few of the early musical numbers to drive home just how perfect they are for each other. Keep the courtroom drama, keep the Arkham scenes, keep most of the damn movie, but don't neuter the character you created in the first film by making him feel remorse for his actions. He's the Joker. Let his freak flag fly. The movie ends with the same bomb that blows up the courtroom, which is a little contrived in my opinion, but we'll gloss over that. And it allows Fleck to escape into the waiting arms of Harley Quinn in the same getaway car. The two peel off into an uncertain future, with carnage being the only guarantee. This also sets you up for a third movie from Arthur's perspective. After a decade-long career of crime and death and terror, he begins to hear stories of a new piece on the board. A piece shaped like a giant bat. Should've, would've, could've, I suppose. Anything would have been better than what we got. The old bait and switch of, oh, Arthur isn't really the Joker, he just inspired the Joker. What the fuck ever. The ending of Folie felt like it was written out of fear. Fear of what they'd created in the first movie, and the fear of following through on it. Speaking of endings, I've reached mine. I hope you've enjoyed my little video, and if you have, don't forget to hit the like and subscribe buttons. Also, please consider checking out my website in the link down below, and buying a book if you're feeling froggy. Thanks very much, and I'll see you on the next one.